So what I'm about to show you guys is a very interesting clip of me and my interview with Ayram. This was during my 30-day journey of exploring Catholicism, and this was when I was really on the fence. I was still Protestant, and I was still trying to defend Protestantism a little bit, but I was still remaining open-minded. But this was when things were just starting to click for me, and I'm really understanding, like, oh wait, Catholicism is much more truer than I realized. And I thought, you know what, I would just take this segment from the interview and share it to you guys. If you are Protestant and you're thinking about Catholicism, this is a great little clip to watch, this little conversation. And even for Catholics, this is good for you to watch as well. And obviously, for anyone that's non-Christian, this is perfect for you to watch. You might not understand all of it, but it's just the depth of Christianity in general that is so beautiful. So, yeah. Let's get onto it.
In my own research, because obviously, like, I'm convinced of Catholicism,
Yeah.
but
Right.
my experience beforehand was I thought I knew everything about Catholics, from out
Yes.
glance, and then I looked into it and I was like, oh my gosh, like, so I like
Yeah.
to keep an open mind, and at least for the past 4 years, I've been able to learn more about other communions, and how they're viewed in other traditions.
Yeah.
But no, that
Yeah.
that's really good. That I think you're thinking about it like in a great way. The what
Yeah.
set it off for me to really start looking into the Eucharist was a video that I watched by Father Mike Schmitz, a very well known American
Hmm.
priest, and he was speaking at like a very large gathering called Seek. It's put on by the Fellowship of Catholic University Students, and they have like basically a national sort of event in January where like tens of thousands of Catholic young adults come, and there's like music, there's Eucharistic adoration, there are like breakout sessions from like well-known Catholic speakers. But he was talking about the Eucharist, and he called his
Mm.
1 hour talk "The Hour That'll Change Your Life." Um,
Wow.
there
That's a
was a
bold statement.
It was a bold statement, and not to be cliche, but eventually it did change my life. Obviously there are people that watch it and they're like, "I watched the whole thing; it didn't change my life." But for me, what jumped out to me was he like recounted a story of he was talking to a missionary who was maybe Baptist or some sort of evangelical, and they were sharing how they
Hmm.
were so passionate, how much they loved Jesus, and he
Yeah.
and like he was telling this young lady, there's a way you can be even deeper in terms of your intimacy with Christ, like right now. And
Mm.
he was like drinking in his words, like how could I do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's in the Eucharist, and she had never heard that word,
Yeah.
Greek word that means thanksgiving, because in the institution of communion, Christ said he broke bread and gave thanks, right? That's
Yes.
why we call it that. And I mean, like he was likening it to like that feeling you have when you're on a date with someone, and you come out of the car and like you grab her hand and take her to the door, and you're able to just embrace, and like that's how he
Mm.
views the intimacy, the physical
Mm.
local intimacy we can have with Christ. And I realized I've never been a part of a
Mm.
church at the time that spoke about the Eucharist in that way. um,
Right.
it was good to have like this memorial of Christ's body broken for us on the cross and his blood shed for us, but it's so much deeper than that. And I don't want to spoil everything for you. Like,
Yeah.
I really think you should watch it. But
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, at the end of that, I was like, I want to start going to mass at least to like
Right.
discern, like, is Christ present in a way that I've never
Mm.
experienced before. Um,
Right. Right.
but yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
So, like, first, I want to highlight like how, like, before you was Catholic, um, you thought you knew everything about Catholics.
Hmm.
And I made that exact same mistake. And making that mistake, I got into a few arguments with Catholics, healthy arguments, but still a little, turning the notch up a. Bit with the heat. And what I realized is that I was coming from a place of complete misunderstanding with all my points. And that was humbling. So that made me come to that same conclusion you did of like, because I've seen about the Eucharist, and I've spoken to a few Catholics, made me come to the same conclusion of like, let me go to Mass and let me experience it for myself to see if there is a different way that I can grow in my relationship with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And my background is like, I'm been going to a Pentecostal church. And like, as soon as you walk in through the doors of the Pentecostal church, everyone's dancing. It's like Holy Spirit is moving, everyone's dancing, and it's very high energy, very high energy. And I associated that at first with just like, this is like, I guess from my new age perspective, from my background, it's like, well, this is like very high vibrational, like this is very like elevating, like this is like, it makes me feel good inside, like and then the sermons were like very good as well, in terms of like, it's not just about feeling good, but like the way they dissected the word and would talk about certain verses was very convicting as well. So it was like the perfect balance of both. But then when I went to the Catholic Mass and I walked into those doors and first instantly connected with the building and seeing Jesus on the cross and sat in the pew, and it's just quiet. Then there's a whole different experience that I'm having. It's called it's reverence, right? Then I'm like, whoa, I can hear my thoughts right now. It's that quiet. I can hear my thoughts. People are waiting for the priest to come and the Mass to start, so everybody's quiet, right? And that it was the complete opposite of the Pentecostal church. As soon as you come through the door, hey, how are you? How's your week been? It's loud. It's very loud. And that was my early introduction to Christianity. It was always loud worship and like people on their knees crying. Like when I got saved, I cried for like 2 hours straight, actually. And I was on my knees, and then I got prayer, and I'm like, I'm ready to give my life to Jesus. And it was very powerful, and like, but it was still very loud.
Mm-hmm.
And going to Mass now a couple times, like I've been on a Sunday and I went on a Wednesday. I was like, I could really see myself like actually getting deeper into prayer because of the silence. Like I can feel myself dwelling, pressing into God's presence and dwelling in it more so, because there's it's not like very heightened. It's more like, okay. So this is why I really was drawn, and then seeing the Eucharist being played out and everybody going to receive the Eucharist, it's just like, and then people are doing this to Jesus, and it's like, wow, this is definitely a different dimension of faith and living by faith and having reverence to Jesus than I've experienced before. But like I said, I'm on the side of non-Catholic still. I am wrestling with now learning about the Orthodox view and the Catholic view.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where now I'm like, okay, I know now I want a deeper communion, not just symbolic, not just crackers and grape juice,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm like, wow, I can't be doing that anymore. It's just like, downplays it so much, right? I don't know. And I have an ex-Catholic friend actually who goes to a church, and he witnessed once where like they were doing symbolic communion,
Mm-hmm.
and a piece of bread dropped on the ground, and nobody picked it up because it's symbolic, right? It's not literal. So like then they threw it in the garbage after. And he was an ex-Catholic, but he had that Catholic root in him, so it was like, whoa, that's not right.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like, but honestly, the main thing I'm wrestling is it's not the Eucharist. It's the Papal Authority,
Yeah.
which is why, like, okay, like Orthodox don't have that. So I would love to, like, this is why I really wanted to speak to you, because I want to hear from a Catholic themselves, like how they explain the papal, like the authority of the apostles, how it's passed down to the bishops, and then how we get the first pope, and how that authority is, I guess, like maintained
Yeah.
throughout time. Because yeah, I struggle with that one really.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I'm a very novice apologist, but I've like read so much about this, so I can just give a basic view on our
Yeah.
view of that. So the primordial text is absolutely the text in Matthew chapter 16. What's happening is Christ is speaking to the 12 apostles at Caesarea Philippi, and he's asking them, who are people saying that he is? And they
Mm,
respond saying, some people think you're Elijah, or like all
yeah.
these other prophets of old. But he says, okay, who do you say that I am? And that's when Simon speaks up and says, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Uh,
Hmm.
and Christ's response is so fascinating. He says, Simon Bar
Yeah.
Jonah, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you. Like, you didn't know that on your own. My Father
Yeah.
in heaven revealed that to you. And then he changes his
Mm,
name to Kepha in Aramaic, which is
right.
rock, right? While they're
Mm,
while they're at Caesarea Philippi, and there's an enormous rock upon which the pagan temples are built.
right. Yeah, I seen this. Yeah.
And so then in the next verses, Christ says, I give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. But before that, he says, I name you Kepha, Peter, rock. Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Then he says, I
Mm,
give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you
mm,
loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So this text
hmm.
was like the beginning of me being like, what is going on here? Like, I did not know
Right.
that Catholics had like a proof text in scripture for the
Mm,
papacy, because we believe there and in a few other verses, there's like, some sort of biblical precedence and historical precedence for this, whatever that office is that Christ gave uniquely to Peter.
hmm.
The only other areas where you hear of this binding and loosing that explicitly are two chapters later in Matthew chapter 18, where Christ is giving this authority to the rest of the apostles, specifically
Hmm.
when he's telling them how to deal with brothers who have fallen away from the faith. You send,
Mm,
one or two of them and you take him to the church. And if he doesn't submit to the authority of the church, you treat him as a tax collector, right?
mm,
Meaning you're essentially excommunicating them. You're
mm.
anathematizing them if they don't submit to the authority of the church. And how do you identify the church that Christ built? It's with Peter and the 12.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so the reason why this was so compelling to me is because I later learned that this sort of office that Christ is describing existed in the Davidic kingdom. And if you go to the book of Isaiah, chapter 22, there's the king at the time is Shebna, and his authority is given via the key of David, like the house of David, to a man named
Hmm.
Eliakim. And it says, whatever you open, none shall shut. Whenever you shut, none shall open. But the
Mm,
thing is, there's a sash put on Eliakim. That's a symbol of the authority of the Davidic kingdom. So there's a steward put in command that's not the king, but that acts and has the
wow.
authority of the king when the king is away. And
Mm.
the
Yeah, yes,
level,
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Now I'm understanding the connection here, because Jesus is the king, but he's ascended to heaven. So who is put in charge whilst he's away? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah.
because people, I think I misunderstood this before I looked into it, but I thought that beforehand that Catholics believe that the Pope is the head of like the church, right? That's
Right.
not our view. He's
Oh, okay, okay. It's not. So
the head of the
okay, you're
he,
definitely helping me learn, because
yeah,
that's how I always saw it. Like, is the Pope the head? Like, okay,
he's the head of the earthly part of the kingdom, but Christ is the head of the church. You know,
right, right. Okay, yes, yeah, yeah.
And
Obviously, yeah.
exactly. So it's like because Christ is away from Earth in his human bodily form, um, Peter and those in union with him are the ones who are in charge, are the ones by whom you can identify the visible church. And
Mm,
this is why Catholics and Orthodox have a very high view of the church because
yeah.
in the first century it was clearly a visible institution. You knew how you could
Yes.
find it, and it was important to find that because directly after Christ ascended, there were incorrect views on theology and doctrine,
Yeah.
like the Gnostic
Yeah.
heresies. Um,
Yeah, I was just about to say the Gnostic. If it wasn't for early Catholicism, and I know this, if it wasn't for early Catholicism, Christianity would have fallen into 8,000 or more different ideologies, heretic viewpoints, because you got to remember that the New Testament scriptures weren't compiled yet.
yeah,
So a lot of it was oral, and when the apostles died, like, because when the apostles were still there, like Peter, John, James, Jesus' half brother, and Paul, if you had an issue with the church, you would just send them a letter, right? And with the authority that they had, they would. I know they had like the council meeting in Jerusalem about the circumcision, right? So this is what I'm learning, right? So like there's no New Testament yet. So like before the word was the authority, the church was the authority.